The film begins in France during the height of World War II. After a brutal battle, the Nazi army manages to penetrate an area of Paris. Then, a German soldier warns the civilians that those who harbor rebels will pay a heavy price. However, the general stops the witch hunt by ordering his men to regroup due to the enemy's proximity. Even though the colonel insists they must teach the French a lesson, just before pulling the trigger, a woman emerges from the crowd and assures the general that they know nothing about the resistance. This sparks a debate between the general and the colonel, although it doesn't last long because their enemies catch them by surprise. Perhaps I was premature in speaking in the plural, for it is actually about one man, a U.S. soldier who fights like an entire army during his retreat. The colonel bids him farewell using the name Ryder, revealing that it is not the first time they have met at point-blank range with grenades. The protagonist makes his way to the Nazi camp, but a sudden bullet brings him down. I didn't see that coming. It seems that what he experienced was a dream that went on too long, and yet he does not recognize the place he finds himself in. While exploring the area, he comes across a bag containing a rather intriguing assortment, a wallet without any documents, a pistol with special engravings, and the keys to a vehicle full of questions. The man goes to the motel receptionist, who informs him that he registered under the name Ryder, just as the colonel had called him in his dream. The newly christened Ryder finds himself on the outskirts with a spectacular motorcycle which he soon discovers is his, complete with a past he cannot remember. The man begins to explore the city, a city he does not know either. In that same city is located the headquarters of the Sanborn Group, presided over by Mr. Sanborn, an aging magnate who is almost always accompanied by his assistant Jack. Interestingly, both appeared in Ryder's dream, Sanborn as the general and Jack as the German soldier interrogating the civilians. Speaking of the dream, they are soon approached by Sauch, whom we knew as the nefarious Colonel Sauch. He presents himself as a renowned architect interested in Sanborn's mega project, which consists of completely remodeling the city. Although it was the project of his life, he has lately had doubts about it because the inhabitants of the lower-ass neighborhoods would be greatly harmed. However, Sauch takes it upon himself to dispel those doubts by reminding him that he has a place in history that must be earned and that it cannot be done without sacrificing pieces along the way. Back with Ryder, he crosses a street that triggers a memory in his mind. A little girl being kidnapped by a criminal gang. Once he snaps out of his trance, the man enters a restaurant for breakfast where he encounters a very familiar waitress, the French woman from his dream. The woman named Morgan works in her grandmother Shell's restaurant, a kind lady who treats Ryder well. She was having an ordinary day until Jack and his men appear to collect the proper rent from Sanborn. Ryder keeps a close eye on them, especially on Jack, who prefers to leave without causing further scandal. What a mess. Once again, Ryder asks Shell if she has heard of any recently kidnapped girl in the city, as she seems unaware of anything. The protagonist leaves without even saying goodbye as soon as he hops on his motorcycle. His mind transports him to the past, this time not to World War II, but to ancient Rome. Now Sanborn appears as a senator who influenced by such orders the death of Morgan and her daughter. Fortunately, a gladiator, none other than Ryder himself, comes to their defense. Suddenly, the man is pulled back to the past because of Jack and his men, who ask him about his identity. What a coincidence, as Ryder was about to ask them the same thing before the brawl broke out. Detective Timmons appears to disperse Jack's gang. Although Timmons has his reservations about Ryder, Shelley and Morgan back him up. They even offer to shelter him while showing him his new home. Morgan explains that Jack works for Sanborn, who recently appeared in People magazine under the pseudonym The Man with a Vision. According to Morgan, this vision is nothing more than making as much money as possible by harassing the locals to pay him every time. Looking at Sanborn's face, Ryder is transported to his fictional memories, and he begins to wonder who that man really is, all while heading to the Sanborn Group headquarters. The protagonist fights a battle in ancient Rome, taking down a group of gladiators in defense of Morgan and her daughter. Thanks to his heroism, the people demand forgiveness for the accused, and the senator complies with their wishes. However, Sauch convinces him to send his best warrior so that the show can continue. Thus, Ryder duels against Jack and his men. In the present, The protagonist spots Sauch leaving the building and soon realizes that he also appears in his peculiar dreams. Back in the restaurant, the man discovers that Morgan is an ADA. Due to a lack of money, she has not had the opportunity to practice her craft. At that moment, Morgan leaves the conversation after receiving a message from Roger Hammond, the most important counselor in the city. Intrigued, Ryder asks Shelley about that man. Morgan is part of his legal team, with which he intends to block the magnate's attempts to alter the city. When Shelley returns to her duties, Ryder is distracted by a newspaper ad for a missing girl not far from Anbor and her accomplices. They scheme a way to manipulate Ho since his record is impeccable and there is no possibility of blackmailing him. How do you break a man who already has everything easily? By taking away what he loves most in the world, his daughter. At night, Ryder receives an unexpected call from Such, who knows that he has been having strange dreams. He gives no explanation, only warning him that they have a game to play. Suddenly, the protagonist finds himself in 15th century England in a tavern. The feudal Lord Sanborn, accompanied by his advisor, Such, demands taxes from poor Morgan, who has already given him everything she had. In the midst of the negotiation, a mysterious old woman appears before Sanborn, telling him that he still has time to do what is right. Torn between what that woman and his advisor say, Sanborn does not know what to do. In the present, Ryder shows up at Detective Timon's office with a notice about the missing girl. According to the detective, that case is already resolved. The girl had only spent the night at a friend's house and forgotten to call her mother. The protagonist then fixes his eyes on a bulletin board filled with photos and articles about Sanborn. Timon warns him that inquiring about Sanborn in that city can be dangerous, which is why he has been investigating him in secret and does not need the help of outsiders like Ryder. That night, while working at the restaurant's bar, the protagonist is approached by Such, who, setting aside his role as an architect, introduces himself as a motivational speaker. Suddenly, Ryder sees him as the Nazi colonel, the friend of the Roman senator, and the advisor of the feudal lord, the snake who is always telling Sanborn what he must do. After dropping that bombshell, Sauch leaves as if nothing happened. Upon touching the architect's card, Ryder then returns to his memory of England, where he again fights against Jack and his henchmen in defense of Morgan. But each fight is more epic than the last. The only thing that brings him back to the present is Shell's voice, warning him that he had been lost in thought all along. The next day, Jack, acting under Sauch's orders, calls Ryder to offer him a job with the Sanborn Group. Upon hearing this, the magnate becomes upset with Sauch for his constant meddling in his business. In response, Sauch asks him to watch the news where Hammond is now promising to defend the city from Sanborn's onslaught. Furious, the old man vents his anger on his project model and gives his accomplices the green light to do whatever is necessary. Later, the protagonist meets with Jack regarding that supposed job, which turns out to be nothing other than intercepting Hammond's car. Ryder goes along with the plan, and on his way back home, he once again finds himself in World War II, resuming the initial scene. General Sa orders the withdrawal of his troops. Although Colonel Such calls him a coward, an enraged general shells an innocent family and soon regrets what he did. Caught between dreams and reality, Ryder encounters Sauch, who makes it clear that sometimes evil must triumph so that good can continue to exist. He invites Ryder to stop fighting against the inevitable and to go with the flow of whatever's happening. And just as suddenly as he appeared, Such vanishes as if nothing had happened, back in the restaurant. Ryder is not greeted by Shell, but by Morgan. Her granddaughter is covering his poker night. What luck for them. Unfortunately, their moment is interrupted by Detective Timons, who informs Ryder that after checking the records, he found no match whatsoever. Essentially, Ryder is a ghost, and he doesn't like ghosts. He prefers to evade the topic and continue his own business with Morgan. In private, she notices his collection of scars, memories of their past lives. Although Morgan feels happy by his side, she can't help but wonder about his past. The next day, when Ryder meets with Shell, she shows him something he hadn't seen on Sauch's card. His name spelled backwards means chaos in English. Meanwhile, Sa comes across a letter on his desk that seems from another era, in which he reads the phrase, "It's never too late to do what is right. the same thing that the old woman in his dreams told him, who turned out to be none other than Shell. With this phrase echoing in his mind, Sanborn finally realizes the error he has committed or is about to commit. Immediately, Jackie orders his men to scrap their plan. There is no way he intends to kidnap an innocent girl. However, nobody obeys him, since from the beginning, they had only listened to chaos. Later, little Annie leaves school and heads home, escorted by her father's guards. Along the way, the van is chased by a couple of cars that drive it to an abandoned area, where Sauch and his men, including Ryder, are waiting. Sanborn appears out of nowhere in a final attempt to stop the inevitable. But of course, the inevitable happens. Jack opens fire on him and his escorts, ignoring the consequences. In the end, the protagonist fires back at Jack, allowing Annie to escape on her deathbed. Jack remembers that they had done this before. From ancient Rome to World War II, fate has always pitted them against each other in an eternal battle in which there can only be one victor, that is Ryder. Next on his list is Sauch. Although Sauch has run out of bullets, he does have an unexpected outcome for the Lord of Chaos. When the adrenaline wears off, Ryder realizes that he is injured and does not look well. Seconds later, Detective Thymans appears alongside Shelley Morgan. Upon seeing his beloved, the protagonist is reminded that in his past lives, whenever he fought for her, he ended up dying, and this time does not seem to be an exception. In his agony, Ryder sees Lord Chaos bidding him farewell. Fortunately, fate smiles upon him by granting a miraculous recovery, or so he believed, because he then sees himself being eulogized at his funeral. Officially, he is a ghost. Before continuing his fight against Chaos, Ryder looks one last time at his dear Morgan. She turns to look at him and smiles,